time throughout the race. Well, Steve Masterton hopes that won't be the view. He hopes it'll be clear track in front of him.
10 seconds away from the start of the Better Race AMSCAR Touring Car Series at Amaroo Park, the 20-lap final. And they get away to a good start, and Bond gets away now. If he can change gears, Masterton with a blinder separates the two of them as they head up Bitchapave Hill for the first time. Robbie Francevic there in 21 also splitting them. Jim Richards dropping back. He's back in about fourth spot. And Gary Wilmington in the XJS Jag comes up to second. No, make that third as Bond goes through on the inside. Got off the freight train. Francevic is the next one through, and Jimmy Richards, who's been away so smartly in all of the races, is back in about fourth spot.
Once again, Wilmington, who's made such a good start, has lost out because he was caught wide going into the loop and allowed 3 or 4 cars to get back underneath him again. All the ground that he made up going up the hill the first time has been lost.
Jim Richards has a power of driving to do now because he's back in fourth, tailing Steve Masterton, Colin Bond, Robbie Francevic, as they head down to the lake corner. And here's Masterton in the Masterton Homes 2WS Commodore. Comes along the short straight to Camalco corner. Bondi making a good start. Francevic is there. And what a good showing from Wilmington too as they go beneath our speed camera across the strike and head up Bitchapave Hill again.
Wilmington in 5th place ahead of Longhurst, who showed out to such advantage in the first 2 heats of the series here today, but not so this time in the 20-lapper. This is the long one. Masterton we saw lead up early in the 2nd heat and then get run down by Jim Richards. Will that be the case this time? Remember, they've got 20 laps to go.
He's been coming out of the gate very quickly, Gary. Masterton bolting away, Colin Bond in pursuit of the tail of the Commodore, really hanging out on that occasion.
He's pushing it hard. I think he knows he's got to push it pretty hard, though, to establish some... Oh, look at the battle here between Francevic and Jimmy Richards. Old adversaries through several rounds now of the Australian Touring Car Championship.
Francevic going in tight behind Richards. Richards coming up to 3rd place now. Bond just ahead of him on the track, and Masterton with a good head over the field heads up Bitchapave Hill again. So the dice is now 3rd, chasing 2nd as Jim Richards, current leader in the Australian Touring Car Championship Series, heads into Dunlop Loop. There's Bond. Car number 26 really throwing the Network Alpha, the Ignis Fridges entry, through the turn and now onto the backstraight.
This little car of Bondi's really has found something here at Amaroo this weekend. He's been campaigning midfield through most of the rounds of the Touring Car Championship so far without doing anything outstanding, but he's right up there mixing it with the front runners today.
Good. I can't wait for the Australian Touring Car Championship round here at Amaroo Park and see Alan Jones here in the 2nd of the Alphas. Here's Richards coming down under brakes, thought about it. Now he goes to the outside. Hope he's going to try and get Bond on the exit off the turn, but Bond covers that nicely, gets off the wall.
Notice all the drivers skirting around the outside of the fuel and oil that's been spilt down there.
It's been a day for Rex. Okay, Richards now lining up for the matching of horsepower. And there you can see the difference as they go over the top of the skyline and dropping down into Dunlop Loop. Richards from 4th to 3rd, past Francevic, now past Bond. He moves to 2nd, and Steve Masterton in the Masterton Homes 2WS Group A Commodore still leads as they come down to Mazda Corner.
Bond not giving up on Richards, though, clinging to his tail through the back of the course, coming down towards Honda again. Masterton leads Richards and Bond.
The big hassle for Steve Masterton, as you can see with the tail hanging out once again, is there's 190 kilograms of lead in the back, where the back seat would be, of the Group A Commodore, and that's heating up the tyres more and more all the time. In fact, the total weight of the car is about 1,410 kilograms, which is about 200 more than it really needs to be in this type of car to conform with the regulations.
Richards is going to get Masterton in the next lap or two. Bond goes through, still holding down 3rd place ahead of Francevic, and then quite a gap from the 4th placed Francevic to Gary Wilmington in the big red Jag.
They're running about a 2nd off Jim Richards' qualifying pace, which was 55.2, and now Richards hard into the tail of Steve Masterton as they go through the loop, and again the Commodore really sliding. Richards' car looking smooth, sitting flat on the road, gets a little fresh air, has a look, fills up the mirrors of Masterton.
And while this is happening, Bond manages to get back on the freight train again, coming down to Honda Corner. Masterton really has his hands full with the Commodore at this stage. Richards will look for an inside run down here under brakes. Bond is there, very alert to try and pick up the pieces. And as they come out along the short straight to Wonderlick Corner, it's still Steve Masterton. Not a bad debut, though. particularly when you consider how Jim Richards has been dominating the Touring Car Championship.
Oh, this is an outstanding first-up showing for Masterton's Commodore. I think they're going to be tickled pink with the results that they've produced here today. Win, lose or draw in this third and final heat of today's round.
You don't think Jim's putting some pressure on him too? Just getting him to skate out a bit wider. Says, let's leave the opening there. Oh, the tail of the car right across the front of the BMW.
Here comes Richards again.
Yeah, Jim will want to get out of here pretty quickly, I'd say. Wait for the pass as Richards puts the pressure on, and he goes through on the inside. So Jimmy Richards has gone through to take over the lead. Wait for Colin Bond to see if he can put the same pressure on as they come out of the bend. The Masterton has been able to lead. Watch for Bond on the inside coming up now.
Well, you can hear it, but you can't see it yet. The distinctive sound of the...
There it
is. 2.5 litre V6 Alpha, but Masterton comes back, puts power to the ground a little bit quicker, and almost snatches back second place. In fact, he does.
Yeah, Bond was just a little slow to react coming out of the corner, got the car just a little bit sideways. And look at Francevic moving up.
As Dick Johnson would say, the Swedish Valiant is on the move, heading up the hill, and Francevic, maybe they put the fourth gear in it for the 20 lapper this afternoon. He's found some, he's come across, now caught in. This is some great Group A racing.
The gearbox that's in the Volvo was found on a farm north of Newcastle by Graham Watson, apparently, and the ratios are totally wrong for Amaroo Park, but it's better than the one they had from Perth.
They come down towards the back part of the course again. Francevic, Masterton still wagging the tail of the Masterton Holmes car, but still doing a great job. Bond there in 26, really keeping the pressure on. Now switches to the inside as they run down to the lake. Once again, we take race cam. Look for Bond on the inside, and don't be surprised if Francevic doesn't come into it as well. There goes Bond. Francevic is hollering around there somewhere on the inside as they come up to take the right-hander. And here's Robbie Francevic with Steve Masterton as they come out of Wunderlich corner, come back across the strike. Richards the race leader, Bond in second, Masterton is third, and Francevic is fourth.
Quite a gap then back to the fifth place getter. That's still Gary Wilmington in the XJS Jag ahead of Tony Longhurst in the BMW. Great dice, in fact, going on between that pair. You couldn't get a bigger contrast in the types of car. Wilmington's Jaguar and the BMW 323 of Tony Longhurst really battling it out in fifth spot, not far astern of the leading quartet at this stage.
German BMW, Italian Alfa, Australian Holden and Swedish Valiant come Volvo, as Dick would say, in fourth position. And that's exactly what Group A is all about. And look here, as Robbie Francevic closes once again under brakes onto the back of the Holden Commodore being driven by Steve Masterton. Said yesterday that he'd be really happy if he could pick up a third or a fourth. They would consider that to be a good opening outing for the car. And they're doing marvellous things. Bond, Masterton, Francevic in the Mark Petch-owned Volvo 240. The turbo just finding its legs over the top of the hill, but not getting close enough.
Check the placings at this stage of the race. You'll find that Jim Richards is still the leader in the JPS BMW, followed by Colin Bond, the Alfa Romeo. Third spot being held by Steve Masterton as we take a break in this round of the Better Brakes AMSCAR Series. And this, as they say, is where the action is. There's Steve Masterton, and the swap places, he and the Volvo of Robbie Francevic. And there was nothing gentle about it either. There was a bit of push and shove involved in it. 11 laps gone in this race, 20 lapper. Jim Richards continues to lead. Let's have another look at this. Francevic has just got by. Masterton says, I don't like that, buddy. Make way.
Tinkle, tinkle. The glass out of the front of the Commodore, and Francevic heads for the hills. I don't blame him. So Robbie Francevic has made it up now to third place. Jim Richards is still our race leader. Colin Bond still running second on the road, and Robbie Francevic is third. Steve Masterton is fourth as we take race cam coming down to the left-hander at Honda.
Mechanically might be quite sound at its first outing, the Commodore, but by gee, he's got some handling to sort out, hasn't he?
Yes, well, as we said before, Gary, the car extremely heavy, just over 1,400 kilograms at the moment. And of course, after August, they'll be pulling some weight out of the car, about 75 kgs, which means it still will carry ballast. But there's a lot of experimentation at the moment with rubber on the Commodores, and I'm sure that Masterton and his professional crew will get it together. But engine and gearbox and brakes are all working fine on this car at the moment.
He's in fourth place on the track at the present time. Tony Longhurst in the BMW is in fifth place, and then comes Gary Wilmington in the big XJS Jag, and at the present time he's under a little pressure himself from car 22. And that's Glenn Malloy in yet another of the BMWs.
And then Kenny
Ken Matthews, yeah.
So some new cars on the circuit for the first time, well, for this season, with Glenn Malloy in the BMW, the car that was campaigned last year by Jim Richards. The man trying to get past him is Sydney car dealer Kenny Matthews in the Commodore that was built for him by Terry Finnegan. So some interesting new equipment on the racetrack today, and good to see Gary Wilmington still out there and powering along in the XJS.
It's interesting, Mike, since I did that interview with him just a little earlier this afternoon about the lack of sponsorship, suddenly Monia roof tiles have come to the party, and they've put their insignia on the side of his car just to see what it's like to get their feet in the water of motor racing. They'll get a good run for their money, I think, with Gary Wilmington. He's a top campaigner.
It's good to see he's got something concrete.
Oh.
Gary Wilmington comes through the bottom corner and onto the straight, and he is either waving to his crew or waving, I can't believe, Ken Matthews through. Keep in mind the car overheated at Sandown at its last Touring Car Championship start, and I'd say yes, that's not necessarily as it overheated, but he has a problem with the car. So bad luck there for the battler from Sydney.
Well, he's running on a borrowed gearbox. He's got one coming from England. Hopefully will be here this week and installed and ready to run in the next round of the Australian Touring Car Championship, which of course you'll see on the 7 network from Adelaide. And that's where he believes this car will be suited, by the long stretches of the Adelaide circuit.
Glenn Malloy doing a pretty good job here in the ex-Richards BMW. Has done a little bit of racing here in Amaroo when he ran the Triumph TR7. Had a couple of years layoff, but he's finding his footing pretty quickly out here at the moment. The car, of course, extremely well set up in the hands of Jim Richards last year in Group C trim, as Gary mentioned. BMW quite naturally fits into the Group A slot very nicely. This is a beautifully turned out motor car, the 2.3 litre 6-cylinder 323 BMW, being driven by Tony Longhurst from Queensland, the man who ran so well here at Amaroo, of course in the Alpha Sud, done some great things up in Queensland in the Gemini series there, had a run last year at the World Endurance Championship at Sandown with Jimmy Richards in the BMW. This car, one of the prettiest little motor cars on the circuit at the moment, lovingly built up by Frank Gardner and all the JPS crew. Done a lot of work on this car and made it very competitive. As I said before, they're hoping to install the 2.5 litre engine in this a little bit later in the season. I think that it's fair to say that Tony is going to be capable of giving people like Colin Bond a fair run for their money in the Touring Car Championship and Endurance Championship. So I guess it's been built to help break up things in that class a little.
At the moment, Tony Longhurst running 5th on the racetrack, but closing just a little bit on Steve Masterton in the number 2 Masterton Holmes car.
Pretty busy boy, Tony Longhurst. Among other things, he's the owner of a fairy floss stand at Dreamworld in Queensland, builds the odd house here and there, and has a pool cleaning contract operations. Pretty strange combination to go motor racing with.
Sticky business. We're for car number 23. And he is doing exceptionally well, Tony Longhurst. Another fellow who's going well at the front of the pack is Jimmy Richards in car number 62, who I think would have started, without doubt, odds-on favourite to win here today, despite the fact that it was the debut of the Commodore by Steve Masterton. But there he goes, 62, Frank Gardner, expressionless.
With Gary Walden in the background.
So they're having a great season, keeping in mind that they've been following a lot of other teams around for a few years, and they're now starting to enjoy a little of the success that they've deserved. Colin Bond, not that far back behind Jim Richards in car number 26 as Richards comes across the line again with the laps running out. Bond in second, checking the gap back to Bond.
3 laps remaining in the race, and a good leader, Jim Richards from Colin Bond, and what a great job Bondi's done in the little Alpha.
0.2 of a second the gap between Richards and Colin Bond.
Yeah, that gap's starting to close now, Mike.
Well, whether or not Jim has cooled it, here's a problem for Gary Wilmington. They're changing rubber.
It's a bit hard to try and come into the pits and do some work when they've got cars lined up in there for the next race, isn't it?
You're not wrong.
Looks like it may have been flat.
Yeah, some power tools would also assist. But then again, when you're on a tight budget, you probably can't afford those luxuries.
Colin Bond coming down towards the lake corner and about 40 metres astern of the race leader, Jim Richards. Just not close enough to apply pressure, but I must admit he does have a 50-metre lead over the third place getter, and that's Robbie Francevic in the hard-charging Volvo.
I think we can expect to see better things from the Volvo in the next round of the Touring Car Championship with those long straights at Adelaide.
And a fully competitive gearbox would help as well.
Yes, I think he's been the find on Colin. He thought he was back doing the Bega Rally or something.
Thought he was at the rally sprint a few weeks ago.
No, I think he might have run out of tyres.
Well, he's still been able to hold that about that same gap, 3/10 of a second back behind Jim Richards. If Richards would be doing anything else but just taking it easy.
Some experience between these two drivers. Colin Bond, twice Australian Rally Champion, winner of the James Hardy 1000 back in '69 in a Holden Monaro. Australian Touring Car Champion, of course. And Jim Richards, winner at Bathurst with Brock, and looking down the gun barrel this year of his first major Australian Championship. And funny enough, both of these fellows have won their major races, their major titles in General Motors products.
Whatever the problem was with Wilmington's Jag, they're back on the track and running, but it's all going to be a little too late because the last lap board is out. It's been taken by Jim Richards and by Colin Bond. Francevic holding down third spot, then Masterton as the final lap unwinds for Jimmy Richards. 3 heats in this first round of the Better Brakes AMSCAR Series at Amaroo Park for 1985, and it's 3 wins coming up for Jim Richards and the clear series leader after round 1. Well deserved, and the form man of touring car racing in Australia so far in 1985, not just here at Amaroo. I say what, Bond's closing up
yes, he's
in the last stages here. I don't know whether it's just a desperation move on his part or whether Jim Richards is content to cruise to the line.
And coming up to take the checkered flag, Jimmy Richards goes on to win the Better Brakes Group A Series at Amaroo Park. Second place will go to Colin Bond. The likeable Kiwi Robbie Francevic will get third place out of it. And salvaging fourth will be Steve Masterton in the Masterton Homes Group A Commodore. So let's recap the official placings for you. As recorded, 62, Jimmy Richards first. Second place going to 26, Colin Bond in the Alfa Romeo. And third place, 21, Robbie Francevic of New Zealand in the Turbo Volvo. In the meantime, we'll take a break and then return for more.